Nigeria's Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, says the 50% tariff upward review for telecom companies is a start, with further negotiations to follow. He said while it should be acknowledged that telcos in Nigeria are facing higher costs, awareness of the higher cost of living faced by Nigerians should also be factored. He spoke with the Rise business correspondent, Rotus Oddiri, at the World Economic Forum in Davos.
Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, it's great to see you here at Davos 2025. I wanted to ask you, Honorable Minister, are you here to sign any multi-billion-dollar investment deals for Nigeria?
Well, thank you very much, Rotus. I'm here as part of the delegation led by His Excellency, the Vice President, Vice President Kashim Shettima, who's leading the delegation, of course, representing His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. It's the second time in Davos for the Tinubu administration, and it's a big difference from a year ago. Slightly less cold, but apart from that, the important thing is this time last year, the delegation of Mr. President was presenting a macroeconomic program, economic stability strategy and plan. This time around, 12 months later, it is now a different story because that plan has largely been implemented. The key elements, as we all know, have been put in place. The economy is growing again. The foreign reserves are building up. The debt servicing as a percentage of revenue is down, and likewise also the debt as the deficit, debt as a percentage of GDP is going down. So we're in a much better place in terms of the investment environment. So you are right. We're here to talk to investors. There are around 3,000 policymakers, politicians, financiers, and corporations. And already, just today, led by the Vice President, we've had conversations which will result in billions of dollars of investments. We talk to people in the financial payment sector. We talk to people in the fast-moving consumer goods sector, major international companies, and already they've indicated that under the improved foreign exchange regime, under the improved investment climate, they are ready and willing to make these investments now. And we have a number of other bilateral meetings lined up to talk to investors who we hope are going to be making their decisions to invest in the Nigerian economy, create jobs, grow the economy, and help reduce poverty in our country.
Thank you so much, Minister. That is very encouraging news. I did want to ask you about the delegation that you led to the IMF World Bank annual meetings back in October or so 2024. Arise News was there. We asked the IMF if Nigeria had approached them for any funding, and they said no, Nigeria has not. Now, on the back of the reforms that have already been implemented, those would actually preclude any requirements for any funding. So would it not make sense to reach out to the IMF for low-interest funding since you've already put in those reforms that they would have asked for already?
Rotus, I can imagine the headlines if you saw a situation whereby you were saying Nigeria approaches the IMF for funding. But the reality is that, of course, as a developing country requiring investment, requiring funds for the government, for investment in key infrastructure to improve the enabling environment for business, we do need funds, and we have needed to borrow. We have relied on relatively cheap funding from the multilaterals, from the World Bank, from AFDB, and the whole spectrum of funding has been used. We have relied on Nigerian savings by convincing them of the macroeconomic plan of the president and it's what it holds in terms of the prospects for growth of the economy and business and the improvement of the business environment. And of course, we have approached the Eurobond market, which is, of course, the commercial end of financing. So we've done that whole spectrum. When it comes to IMF financing, typically Financing from the IMF is to help with short-term balance of payments issues and crises. In the case of Nigeria, we have a positive trade balance. We have a positive current account balance. Our reserves are growing. The governor of Central Bank recently announced that we had achieved, upwards of $10 billion improvement and increase in the reserves. In such a case, funding by the IMF is not the appropriate source. And where we are now is that having utilized multilateral financing, concessional financing as much as possible, now we need to optimize our assets. We need to use equity. We need to rely on crowding in the savings, particularly of the private sector in Nigeria and the private sector around the world in the form of foreign direct investment. We have to remember that at this time, yes, we have had significant gains in terms of improving the economic environment. However, we do admit and we confront fully the fact that inflation is relatively high, cost of living is high, cost of food is high, and that is the determination, that is the focus of Mr. President's determination in terms of what to tackle next. It is the high rate of inflation, of course, led by the central bank, which controls the monetary tools, interest rates in particular. But also, inflation it is not just for the monetary side. Inflation is a fight for all of us. And on the fiscal side, there is much to be done in increasing the supply. If you want the price of a good to go down, it's not just a question of restricting demand, it's also a question of increasing supply. And in particular, as has happened during this dry season harvest, which is going on in Nigeria, with concerted efforts to provide the smallholders in particular with the various inputs, herbicides, fertilizer, seeds. We are having a good harvest, but more needs to be done there, and there's a commitment to increasing food production, so therefore achieving a lower price of food, more availability and affordability of food for Nigerians. That is a major commitment alongside growing the economy as a whole.
Honourable Minister, you mentioned the business environment. I did want to take you back to a pressing issue back home, which is the tariff review for the telcos. There hasn't been a review in 12 years. The Tinubu administration has finally come around to doing that. They wanted 100% tariffs to meet up with costs. I know you understand that as a businessman yourself, Honourable Minister. They did get 50%. There's been some backlash because of cost of living. But Honourable Minister, if you want to get, incentivize the telcos to get more investment, is that 50% enough in your view?
Well, I think I agree with you that there is a need to reflect the fact that over a 12-year period, there has been a rise in cost, there has been inflation, and that needs to be reflected, of course, in the business computations for the telcos, which are, of course, they have a regulated, to an extent, their pricing is regulated. They're not just free to give any tariff that they want. So the cost of living that increase that has occurred has to be reflected. But I think 50% is a start. And it's all about compromise, and it's all about the timing and sequencing of some of these changes, necessary as they are. And in this particular case, we want the telcos, who are a very, very critical aspect of the Nigerian economy, of the infrastructure offering that is part of the business environment in Nigeria. We want them operating efficiently. We want them terminating calls efficiently. We don't want dropped calls. We want good quality services from them. And at the same time, we want them growing, employing people, and basically adding to the GDP of the country. And that's why this 50% increase has come through. And I believe that is a situation that will be looked at on a forward-looking basis. As we go forward, there will continue to be review, consultation and discussion in this area.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Speaking of forward-looking basis and moving forward, 2027, of course, is another election year. Many fear that 2025 is probably the last year we'll see any reforms, and that from 2026 there'll be electioneering and government could be distracted. Is that the case? Well, what's your take on what to look for?
Well, the first thing I would say about the issue of reform, it's ongoing. And I must say that even in Davos here, as we saw at the World Bank annual meetings and other international fora, there is a lot of credit, there is a lot of admiration and commendation given to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for having led the Nigerian economy and society out of devastating and wasteful and very costly expenditure on various subsidies. Having achieved that, he is determined to continue on the path of improvement of the Nigerian economy. I think the outlook, as we are seeing and we are sensing even today, is that the investors are coming back. In the oil and gas sector, once again, Nigeria is attracting the most investment within the context of Africa. It had fallen behind before. It is now back to the fore. And I think the same thing is happening in other areas of the Nigerian economy. All 19 major subsectors are growing, they are improving, and it is critical to emphasize that investors are lined up and ready to come in. Not just foreign direct investors, but even Nigerian investors. And so I think the outlook is for a continued improved environment for investment that will increase the productivity and competitiveness of the Nigerian economy. It will grow the economy, create jobs, and reduce poverty. And talking of reducing poverty, there is equal determination to maintain the social safety net and improve upon the delivery of help particularly to the poor and the most vulnerable, in the form of direct benefit transfers and other interventions that help to ease the cost of living. So the future is bright, the outlook is very positive. Thank you.
Honourable Minister of Finance, Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, thank you so much for talking to Arise News here in Davos 2025.
Thank you for having me.